Hey everyone, thanks for coming today. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Lior, product manager in Google for GeoSearch, and with me today is Mano from Google as well. So we want to talk today about the Geo Web and how to search for geo content. And let's start with a brief history lesson. So it used to be once upon a time, we had just a bunch of geodata, maybe some map. This is the early historical map, BC, and geodata was very precious and rare. If we'll fast forward to today's reality, I just pulled up some numbers from the web yesterday. There's almost 50 million Flickr geotagged photos as we speak today on Flickr. We just announced recently that we've passed the 10 million mark with created My Maps on Google. Millions of GPS tracks being uploaded all the time to the web and accessible to everyone. More than 1 million Wikipedia entries and 150,000 public Maps API sites. Some of them are sitting with us in the room today that are creating geodata, that are publishing geodata, that are allowing geodata to find its way to the web. So what happens with all this geodata? Another history lesson, sort of similar to the progress of the web. We used to have HTML on the web. We now have KML for annotation of geodata or GeoRSS. So we have a markup language for annotating geodata. We had RSS on the web. We have GeoRSS for annotating feeds of geodata. We had internet browsers, and we have now geo browsers like Google Earth and Virtual Earth and other browsers. Then the browsers and the markup language create websites. So we had a lot of websites, and we now have a lot of Maps API sites that have geodata on them. And when you start having these sites, the first way to start organizing them is by directories. So we had directories on the web, and we all know about a couple of examples of directories on the Geo Web that try to somehow organize and categorize this data manually. But really the scalable solution is a search engine. And that's where we sort of are with this Geo Web. And what we want to talk about today is GeoSearch, which is our Google attempt of organizing the world geographic information and make it universally accessible and useful. So this is a snapshot of our index as we've presented actually on the last Dev Day, exactly a year ago, May 07. This was a very interesting snapshot of all the geographic data that we could find anywhere on the web or anywhere else on Google being put on one map. And I just want to hit enter and show you what happened to this map over the last year. So we see a lot more data coming to the web, the long tail of geodata really developing, and it sort of sent the message of how much data is now out there. And I want to spend some time of just exploring the possibilities that this data creates for us. You can see it's pretty fascinating. You can see the Nile River, the Amazon, underwater volcanic under the Atlantic, sea temperature in China, and KML flights to Hawaii. Just about every piece of geographic information is there. So what exactly is there in the index that we're building? And this is just to give you a notion of the richness, and then we can talk about the implication and what can actually developers do with it. But before, let's look a second at the data. So we have the base map. On top of it, we've added a couple of months ago all the geo-located books, the locations that we extract from Google Books, so just one piece of information that is there. All the geotagged Wikipedia articles are there, more than 1 million. all of the panorama of photos, and let's switch for some demos to just give you a notion of this data and what you can do with it. So here's my regular Google Maps search box, and I can search for the Big Ben. And now I'm getting tons of information. It gets me to the location of the Big Ben, but I see here tons of information about the Big Ben. Information from my maps, information from KMLs on the web, information from other places. Let's explore for a second what we have on the Big Ben. So if I type Big Ben panorama, or even better, Big Ben photos, you'll get photos from Picasa on the Big Ben, photos from Panoramio on the Big Ben. All of this is searchable and accessible on Google Maps. If I type Big Ben books, actually, or if I type books on London, and I will restrict to get only user-created content, then we'll start seeing a lot of books and a lot of locations, geotag location from books. So those are just a couple of examples. Moving on, we have all of the geotagged YouTube videos available and searchable. And let's do a demo here. So I want to search for, let's jump to Mountain View. And I want to search the Google Geyser, my favorite video. And this is the Google Geyser. Just a video that somebody captured just outside of our building in the Google complex, and gives exactly the exact geolocation of the video, and all of this is searchable. Another geyser collection is in San Francisco, but all of this data, again, is in the index. Moving forward, GeoRSS. So all the GeoRSS on the web, and let me give you a very cool example that I just happened to run across today. So let's, for example, search for upcoming events in San Francisco. And what you can actually see here, if I'll again type on user-created content, is RSS feeds from upcoming.org, from manufacturers, from outside in. All of those are GeoRSS feeds that we collect, index, and make available to all of you on Google Maps. Moving forward, all of the KML on the web that is available in the index. And recently, we see, as part of this growth of geodata, we announced a couple of pre-baked GIS tools like ESRI, like OpenGeoServer, that are now outputting KML by default, so we can go index this data and serve it to you. And why it's so important for me to show you all those type of content? Because together they form the Geo Web, but now they're all packaged and nicely being put out to you because they're available in the API. So starting a week ago, all of this information is available in the Ajax Local Search API, and we'll touch in a second about how can you access this data and what you can do with this data. But all of those results are available for you, for websites, for any Maps API developer to embed on his site and use. I want to show some other just samples of what this allows us to do. So let's start for a simple example of places where we don't have any geodata. So this is Buenos Aires, Argentina. We don't have any Yellow Pages feed or any other type of data, but we have the Geo Web. So I'm getting a nice list of hotels. This is a website, Vanir Friedrichstrasse, that outputted KML, and it's in the index. This is a my map of a user, and we've just heard a presentation about my map of somebody putting information on a my map about hotels in Argentina. Again, very detailed, useful information that is accessible to anyone. I can also find Tango places, same way. I'll search for Tango, and I'm getting a very nice collection from Flickr, from other places, about all the Tango places in Buenos Aires. I can also find elephants in Africa. Let's see if I can find it. And I'll restrict to user-created content. So yeah, here's all the places that elephants in Africa were spotted. If I'll jump to the next page, and let's see. Let's zoom in for a second here on the satellite photo. Yeah, there's actually elephants found here. So every piece of information in the world is annotated and searchable. The other thing that you can do is do a site restrict. So, for example, I want to find all the hikes near San Francisco. And this will give me a list of many hiking sites in San Francisco or near San Francisco. But I want to find, let's just let it run for a second. Yeah, so again, the blue dots, all the hiking places from the Geo Web, but I want to find only places coming from a specific site. So I'm adding a site restrict on playshell.com. And you see, this is now giving me only data from playshell.com. And we'll touch on this later. Also, if you want to have a custom search box that searches for data only on your site, here's how to do it. Just add a site restrict, and you can do this as well. The other property of the Geo Web and what it allows us to do is almost real-time data, or very powerful data in our fingertips. Just an example I ran on this morning when I tried to understand where exactly is Google I/O. So used to be searching for Google I/O, finding on a website it's in Moscone Center, trying to locate Moscone Center, but now with all the web information on Google Maps in the Geo Web, I can just type to my regular Google Maps search box, Google I/O. And yeah, here's the location actually of Google I/O. This is from a specific my map that some user created, but it can also come from, again, KML, GeoRSS on the web, all of your sites. If you have hiking data, biking data, earthquake data, any types of data, and you want people to find it, that's the way. This is actually available today, the GeoSearch capability on Google Maps, on Google Earth, so you can search for this on Google Earth as well. On GMM, on Google Maps Mobile. So I actually did this search today when I left my home on Google Maps Mobile, for now only on Blackberries, and just been able to find the location of the conference using my mobile. So all of this information is out there and available. So how does it work? We get content from three main sources, I would say. One is all the Google properties that I've just shown. We reach to them and get all the geotagged information from photos, from videos, from books, soon from news, and index it. We also call the web for this information, and if we pick any KML or GeoRSS that we find on any website, we'll index it as well. So once you publish your data, either as KML or GeoRSS, it's there. And the other method that we can reach this data is by you submitting a sitemap. So we just announced also last week a Geo sitemap, which is a new type of sitemap that allows people to submit and to inform us that they have geo content. And if you want to just make sure that we have the content and we index it, that's where to go. You have to either choose KML or GeoRSS, and we'll talk about this in a second as well. But if you want your data in, that's how to get it into the index. We do the feature extraction, so we take all the features out, we index them, and put them on the GeoSearch database on the GeoSearch index, and then all of those clients, when they formulate the queries, for example, dog parks in Berkeley, so we, as every other query on Google Maps, we just take dog parks, take Berkeley, pull them apart, and try to answer the query of all the dog parks near Berkeley. So here's another example. We have, news from topics.net about dogs waving in Berkeley, but we also have a Maps API site, barksentry.com, that used to have data about dog parks, just published as a KML, as a KMZ in this example, and then any Google user can tap into this knowledge and get traffic into barksentry.com. And again, just being alone out there on the web and looking for someone that will find your dog parks KML or your dog parks Maps API site is kind of tricky. This is just raining the power of Google Search, of Google Maps, to get directed relevant traffic to your site. So just another example. So this is what we're doing, and I'll invite Mano on stage to talk a bit about the technicalities, how to publish data, and how to access the data in the API.
Is this on? Okay. So my name is Mano Marks. I'm a developer programs engineer at Google, which means it's my job to help you do stuff. So I just want to go over a couple of the new things, and then I'm going to plunge into how that actually works on sitemaps and how to optimize your KML and GRSS for use with sitemaps. Okay, so there are basically three ways to access through the AJAX local search API. You can do the local search control on maps. You can do the local search control in the API, in the JavaScript AJAX APIs, and then you can do local search API from a non-JavaScript client. So let me just go over some of these. So any of you who have developed maps are probably familiar with the local search control, which gives you this option to just put a local search control right onto your map. There's also the local search API within our JavaScript API. It's just really simple. It's a few lines of code to add anything in that you want to do, and then using it from a non-JavaScript client. Here's an example of using it from Flash. So you basically just give it a URL. This gives you a site restrict on it. If you want, you can do request only particular file type. So in this case, KML only. And let me show you. Actually, did I have an example back here? I did. Sorry, I didn't show you this example here. So here you can see we have on the map a local search. So if I'm in Paris, I can search for pizza because that's what I always search for when I'm giving a demo. And you see, we can see search results here.
Try searching for baguettes.
I don't know how to spell baguette, so I don't do that. But I can try and do croissants. There we go, croissants. And you'll see this gives you access to these locations, and I can click over to different locations. And surprisingly, there are not. I would think that there would be more, but I'm sure it's not croissants exactly in French. So, okay. So back to this one. So you see that was a very easy example. This is example in Flash. Let's see this one showing up. So you see this is our Flash Maps API. So if anybody hasn't seen this before, here it is. And so again, I'll do dog parks London just to see. Apparently there are no dog parks in London. So let me go over and, this is this site or the Geo Web. So I can restrict it to this site, which I think is the example I showed you, or give it the access to the entire Geo Web index. Okay. So you can also add a geo search box to search the geo contents of your site using the site restrict. I think that was an example in the Flash API, the Flash Maps API. Here's another example, which I believe uses the JavaScript API. Give this a minute to actually come up. Okay, come on. So let me just see if I can go directly to it. Registry.com. All right, so we're experiencing a slight internet connection delay there, which is Internet Explorer decided to kind of lock things up for a moment. So
I'm not getting trailregistry.com.
You're not getting trailregistry.com? So never mind. I need to, here we go. This is the slideshow. Please come back on. And my slideshow is freezing up as well. So I'm just gonna, while I have a little technical difficulties, does anyone want to ask a question? We have time for one question at the moment. Why don't we use Max? Good question, thank you. This is actually my system, and currently the Google Earth browser plugin only works on PCs, although we have announced that we're going to do Macs. So I prefer to develop on this system and demonstrate things on this system so that I can use the browser plugin. Plus, I'm a gamer, so I'm used to PCs. Yes? Yes, you can do a site restrict in JavaScript, which I think is what I was attempting to show you here. And I'm getting total lockup here. So I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Now, which one is it that, is it the program itself?
Oh, it's fine, it's purple.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to try and go to trailregistry.com. Okay, so what if you want to index your own content? How do you go about that? I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, talking about KML, GeoRSS, give you some of the best practices, and then talk about how to actually publish that sitemap, give that to us. Okay, so here's an example of having your data in GeoRSS. So you'll see here we're trying to describe hiking in a point on a hiking in Beaverbrook in New Hampshire, and let's just see. Hopefully my browser will open up on this one. So you see there, this is an example of this point in as it's been indexed. Okay, so GeoRSS is it's a format. It's obviously based on RSS. Typically, people will do it in RSS or Atom feeds, and they'll just add in the GRSS. You'll see there's a GRSS point there, and that just describes the actual physical location there. You'll see the title and link and description are things that we will access for our index. We'll mine those for keywords. That's how we'll do the indexing, and then the point is how we'll do the local referencing. So GeoRSS works well for providing georeference with some markup. It's kind of lightweight when you're comparing it to KML as terms of the geo stuff, but it has a lot of tags that there's no native equivalent in KML, and works if you have a GRSS reader, which there aren't, I think, very many of, but you can use that as a standard syndication format. Anything that you're used to with RSS. Okay, so here's an example of a KML file. So you'll see this is actually a KML 2.1 file, but KML 2.2 is the latest. You'll see in there we have the KML format, the geo format is the stuff that is actually what we think of as is primary, and the secondary elements are things like the name and the description, things that we will still mine for the information. And within each of the place marks, you'll see there are points or line strings or polygons or models, things that we will use for the location of the file and how that is relevant for your local search. And let me show you this example. Track log near Leipzig. Okay, so you'll see there. Okay, so KML supports a sort of a richer content. It's not really a feed format, though. So if you're used to that, but we do support atom link. We do support atom link and name author elements. Sorry, in KML as a way to incorporate those attribution elements. So we'll index those as a way to provide you with the authorship, the attribution, when you're doing a geo search. Okay. So let me talk a couple more KML creation tips. As opposed to GRSS, which is generally part of a feed of information, we suggest that you make KML files that make sense in isolation, so that the individual point is actually meaningful and doesn't have to be a part of a larger set. So that means maybe putting a little bit more description into each one of them to identify what's the important part. And then use the document and folder level description elements and name elements for keywords that apply to whole sets of features. And we will actually be aware of that. So if you're using a folder or document element as a container for a lot of place marks, we'll be aware that anything that's on that level in the structure, the hierarchy, is relevant to all those features. Okay, so keep the number of features per file reasonable. Hundreds are okay, tens of thousands are probably not. It's going to be a lot more difficult for us to index all of those, and if you're trying to make a lot of context, so if you have one big folder with tens of thousands of place marks in there, it's going to be less meaningful to us, and it's also not going to show up, in the top 10 results as easily. So use region-based network links for your larger data sets. And we do say that we are aware of these and we'll follow them. We don't talk exactly how we do that, but let me give you, there's a link here to the documentation on how to actually set up regions. Okay, so here's a little bit more, just wanted to go a little bit more in depth on the attribution in GeoRSS. So attribution is one of these things that a lot of people are very concerned about. This sort of feeling that when you have a KML, when you have KML and GeoRSS, and you put it out there on the web, then anybody can copy it and claim it's their own. So we do suggest some things for attribution, in particular in GRSS. You'll see there's an author tag here, and there's a link tag here as well. And so these things identify to us what the attribution is. So one of the questions I always get is, what if somebody switches these tags and puts in their own attribution? There's not a lot we can do about that. It's basically like HTML, right? So people want to kind of lock up their geo content, but like HTML, there's only a limited amount that you can do with that. Okay. So before I get into some of the going into a little bit more detail on the different formats, I wanted to stop and give people a chance to ask questions, because some people might forget their questions as I go along. Any questions? Yes, do you want to use the microphone?
We're developing a system that will use all the features that we see in Google Earth. We also have a number of points, lines, and polygons that we don't know if we need to host them ourselves and give them to you in a feed indexed, or if we push them up to some kind of API or platform or data store on your side. In other words, do we need our own geo database to store geometry locally so that we can index and integrate with the larger maps?
So there are a few different options, and actually I'm giving a talk this afternoon on hosting your geo data. But basically, at this point, your options for having us host your data are primarily in My Maps. You can also upload data to Google Base, which is another of our APIs, but that's not specifically a geo data storage. I'll have an example of doing it using Google App Engine as well this afternoon. But in terms of getting it indexed well, if it's in My Maps, it will be indexed, and if it's something that we crawl or you give us a sitemap, you'll need to have maybe a KML or GRSS. You can either do it as a script that generates it and point us to it in the sitemap, or you can do it as alongside. I'll go into more details on that. Sure. Yes?
On this note, are KMLs in pages.google.com indexed?
That's a really good question. Base does allow you to put in into it custom what they call attributes and what are in XML terms elements. It doesn't natively have like an awareness that this thing is a KML file. I'd actually I don't think we go out of our way to find specific KML stuff that's indexed within Base. I'd have to.
Base is currently not indexed.
Base is currently not indexed for the for that. Although you could point to a sitemap to a base feed that outputs. You have a base feed that outputs in GRSS, or I believe some of the feed the Google Data APIs will allow you to output into KML as well. So you can do it that way if you wanted.
Hi, I was wondering how you prevent your geodata from being spammed or poisoned. For example, you go on the web search, you try looking for a ringtone editor, you get like 10 pages of like ringtone spam before you get relevant results.
Yes. So we at Google have we're making a lot of efforts against spam, and we don't generally talk about how we actually go about doing it. But it is a problem that we're aware of, and it's a problem that we try and address. And with spammers, it's sort of it's an arms race, right? It's a constant battle. But we are working on it, and we do believe that we're trying to win. We're winning that battle. So.
Okay, well, it's also dovetails into just the ranking, the relevance of results. I mean, as this gets more popular, you're going to have hundreds of similar results. How do you figure out which ones are good and which ones, have been, put there by search engine optimizers?
Yeah, I mean, as Mano said, it's a ranking problem. So in the end, first of all, we'll try and aggregate as much as we can because it's giving us as much signals as we can. And then we'll try to do some duplication elimination and take away all the garbage and leave with the good stuff. But in the end, the best practices that applies to the web apply to this case. So output, if you want your content up, output it with all the best practices. Try and people to link to your site, and in this specific example, link to your features on your site, and follow all the best practices on the web, because in the end, it's the same problem that we're trying to solve.
Okay, one last part of this question, I'll let you go, is that, you'll have like a feedback mechanism like you have with the web search results?
A feedback mechanism?
You have on your web search results, there's their feedback, user feedback mechanism saying this is a bad result. We
don't have any feedback mechanism for now for Geo results.
Thanks.
The previous fellow just asked my major question I was going to ask about ranking. But the second question I had is are you indexing KMZ compressed formats or
KMZ?
just the...
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we are. It seems like some of these questions are going towards the things that I'm going to talk about, so I'm going to go on a few more slides. Feel free to raise your hand and interrupt me. I actually, this is, the bright lights are on me and we're filming this for YouTube, but if you want to just raise your hand and then jump up and ask a question or whatever order you want to do that in. That way, I like to have this kind of, more of a discussion about things. Not used to as big a format as this. So let me jump in a little bit more to the details. We have this slide in here, how to decide between GRSS and KML output. So you can choose a GRSS if you're already outputting RSS. It's a good, obviously a good native format. You want to convey the updates or more recent items that are contained in the data. If you only ever want to represent point data, that's sort of one of the better practices. Here, let me give you an example here of an RSS, another example of an RSS outlay on the maps. So one of the things that I should say is that you can use both GRSS and KML in your mashups. So this is an example of using an RSS feed in your mashup, and you see it's got quite a good, you can have a rich experience. You can, within a lot of RSS feeds, you can put in HTML, so you can have that show up in the description below. So then, we believe that KML provides you with a richer experience. You have a wider range of things that you can do with KML, including creating regions which allow you to specify, only show this when somebody is looking at a certain area, or we have the network linking capability, the ability to upload 3D models. There's a lot of different things that you can do. With KML, some of which will show up on maps, and all of which will show up on Earth. The other thing, I don't know that we've actually said this in this talk, but GeoSearch is not just on maps. It's on maps for mobile, and it's also on Google Earth. So I don't have Google Earth open right now, but I can, towards the end, if there's questions about that, I can pull that up as well. So the other thing, which we didn't actually put on the slide, is you can use both. So if you're using GRSS and you have some customers or you have some people who would prefer to get it in that format, use GRSS and also output KML. That's my standard suggestion is at this point, you're generating a few extra lines of code. It's not that big a deal to maintain both GRSS and KML. Okay, so here I want to show you an example of using KML overlay in Google Maps. So, all right, so let me go on. All right, so there's two general strategies for using KML and GeoRSS in your mashups. One is you can use it directly. So, you upload directly the KML or the GRSS into your mashup and also then point your sitemaps to it. And another is to use it as a reference for indexing. So some people prefer to do most of their data in some other format. I'll talk a little bit more about that, either in some other format or just directly program it into their mashup. And then what you can do is you can generate sort of a reference KML or GRSS feed that we can then index. Okay, so going over using KML and GRSS in your mashup directly, the advantages of doing this are that the data is already there, and the format serves well for both your mashup and your sitemaps. The cons are it can be a little bit heavyweight to load a whole KML or GRSS into your maps browser. JSON may be faster. It's more optimized better for working with JavaScript applications. I should note, we actually did this slide before the Google Earth plugin came out, and I haven't actually done any testing, but I think KML would be pretty rapid on using the Google Earth plugin. So that's another thing that you can consider. So here's an example of using KML directly. It's pretty easy. You just in Google Earth, in Google Maps. So you do if you're creating your map, you set the center, and then all you do is you add. Sorry, I clicked on. One of the things I don't like about PowerPoint. You create a GGO.xml and assign it your KML file, and then you add it. So it's 2 lines of code to add that, and that's the example that I just showed you. Here's another example. Lots of people are using KML directly in their mashups. So here's another example. Somebody added on KML, and these are actually a bunch of different KML feeds. So, okay. You can do the same thing with GRSS. It's actually just exactly the same thing. Instead of sending it a KML file, you give it a GRSS file. There's other ways to do this. You can use a custom parser or a user extension. So one thing that you might notice about GGO.xml is it doesn't give you access to programmatic access to the KML or GRSS files. You're just basically loading them whole hog into your applications. There are a number of different parsers out there that will do these sort of thing. Do this for you. One of the most commonly used, for instance, is EGO.xml. But you can also roll your own. Both GRSS and KML, they're XML. And so, it's pretty standard. If you're doing a lot of JavaScript AJAX programming these days, you know how to walk the DOM and find all the elements that are points, and then find the parent element that, find the child element that's a coordinates tag if it's XML. This is an example of somebody using, somebody doing this. So here you've got the variable XML doc is, GXML parse some document, and then finds all the place marks in it. This is a KML file. And then walks through each of the place marks, finds the name, finds the description, and finds the coordinates elements, and then does something with that to construct markers out of each one of those. Okay, so the pros of doing this is it's a lot more flexible. You can you can determine how you want the actual display to work yourself. The cons are you have to do it. You have to actually write your own parser. So that's, or you use something like eGeoXML. Okay, and again, this is a slide that actually basically just shows doing a similar thing using GRSS. The one thing I'll note about GRSS is it tends to be a little bit different depending on the way you've implemented. So if you implement GRSS using an Atom feed, it's going to be different than using an old-style RSS feed. Okay, and so then we want to go over using KML or GRSS as a reference for sitemaps. So this is basically, you use some other format to generate your own data format. You might do it in JSON. You might do it in GeoJSON, which is starting to gain popularity. That's a standard way to represent geodata in JSON. And it allows you to make your own decisions about how heavyweight or lightweight you want the data structures to be. But the con is then you have to maintain these multiple output formats. As I said before, I don't think that's actually that difficult, but it is something that you would need to do. So you maintain the two output formats. One would be the JSON or the mashup, and the other would be whatever, what you're producing, the KML, the GRSS for sitemaps. So there's a few different options you can use to do this. One, you can set up a cron job that at certain intervals produces some static URLs. Another is you can point the sitemap to a script that outputs the KML based on, it might be the same kind of script that you use to output your JSON or whatever other data format you're using. If your site doesn't change very often, you can produce the KML once using whatever tools you use. You can even hand code it and then put that up there and have that indexed. So I have a little thing here that says sample code from using PHP to output MySQL, but I think we did not include that in this slide. But if anybody wants, I'll be talking about doing this this afternoon in my hosting KML talk. Okay, so this is a summary, best practices for KML GRSS creation. Give your document a meaningful name. That's one of the signals that we're going to use for our indexing. Make sure that the item description field, whatever, which is, in KML, that would be the description element. Make sure that that is relevant to whatever you would like it to be for searching. Use attribution, the author and link tags. Divide your data into topic or region-specific files so that it's easier for us to index and find things that are contextually relevant. Put all your files into a sitemap and use robot.txt if needed. So, I only have a few slides left, so I'm just going to go through this, and then we'll have more time for questions after that. Publishing your content. So this is like the final step here. So a couple weeks ago, was it just a couple weeks ago now? Or yeah, a couple weeks ago we announced a new sitemap type that we announced this at Where 2.0. It allows webmasters to specify the specific geo content that makes it easier for us to do, easier and faster for us to do discovery and can do more reliable indexing. And as you're publishing your sitemap to us regularly, we can do, we can index it more quickly, and it's fresher. So here's the basic structure of a sitemap. You'll see you have a URL set element which wraps a set of URLs. It's got a namespace for sitemaps, and it's also got this geo namespace. And then for each URL, you do a location, and then you have a geo Geo tag, which has a format child. And that tells us what the actual format of the file is. And you'll see here we have, this is multiple ones. The options for the format are KML, KMZ, and GRSS. So currently those are the only three the ones that we're indexing. That constitutes the vast majority of the content that we have available on the web. Then if you want to submit it, you just go to google.com/webmasters and submit it. We actually have a little URL here that gives you more information about submitting sitemap. And here's the URL for the full GeoSearch documentation. Let me see if I can open up this one here. So we have, if you want to go to this URL or find this on the web, what is a geo sitemap? And then there's more documentation on it on our KML documentation page. Okay, so we have a few questions, frequently asked questions. One is, when will my content show up? So currently, when you give us a sitemap, or when we crawl a site, we crawl sites, it's a matter of weeks. Pretty soon, it will be a matter of days. And it's very quick. We don't reveal how quick if you use my maps, and particularly you're thinking about the talk before this, the new GData API for my maps. Polygons and lines are indexed by the centroid, and that's what's displayed. There's no schema for the new geo sitemaps because that's just the way sitemaps.org is currently structured. It's a question that comes up a lot. And if you want to make sure that your results show up, it's very similar to web search. Follow the standard best practices and have a very relevant content. Okay. Did you make I don't think we made these announcements. I have a couple of quick announcements, and then I'll take questions. So we have 2 session changes. We have rescheduled surprisingly rockin' JavaScript and DOM programming with GWT to take place at 2 o'clock. And we will repeat the session, building a scalable web application with Google App Engines at 12:45. Oh well. All sessions, excluding the fireside chats, will be posted by mid next week on the Google I/O website. And please remember to fill out your evaluation forms and leave it in the collection bin at the back of the room. Okay. Any questions? If you could use the mic. Can you use the mic?
Is there Google Maps trends, like Google Trends?
Is there a what?
Google Maps trends.
Trends? No, not at the moment. It's an interesting thought. We should talk about it.
For indexing purposes, you mentioned having hundreds of points rather than thousands or tens of thousands. If you have points that have a lot of markup associated with them, HTML content, descriptive content, does that affect how many points you should put in a file?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some limit of a file size, but it's pretty big, so yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay,
Cool.
thanks.
Thanks.